ज्योति स्टेनो टाइपिंग कॉलेज में आप सभी का स्वागत है बच्चों। ये आपकी डिक्टेशन नंबर है 98। वेबसाइट पे इसको लगा दिया गया है। पहले अच्छे से लिखें, फिर इसको टाइप भी कर दें और अपनी एक्यूरेसी को जान लें। डिक्टेशन स्टार्ट आफ्टर 5 सेकेंड। Mr. Deputy Chairman, I think the importance of my resolution has been accepted on all hands, and from the way in which interest has been shown from the discussion on it, I am convinced it is the subject of prime importance in the country today. While there has been by and large support to the recommendations that I have made, namely monopoly, procurement of essential commodities, there have been a few voices of some adverse comments. Therefore, I would like to deal with those a little before I go on to the subject matter of the resolution and the need for complying with it. Mr. Tyagi mentioned during the discussion that he was apprehensive that if monopoly procurement is resorted to, it will take away the element of competition, and it is the element of competition which is inherent in free trade in laissez-faire policy, to which he attaches so much importance that this resolution in his opinion should not be accepted. I am afraid what Shri Tyagi ji has said and those who subscribe to his opinion should not be, to his way of thinking, his ethos, his philosophy on such questions will lead to sure disaster, because the only example which Tyagi ji gave us, say, of a rickshawala during the old days. He used to stand near Connaught Circus, and for 4 annas the rickshawala could take him to any distance he liked. I am afraid we are living in a world far different from what it was, say, 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Therefore, I am afraid Tyagi ji's approach is rather obscurantist, and it is a little difficult to swallow it, and I can suggest that he should ponder over it to realize that but for the fact that government had some reserves, it would not have been possible to meet the overwhelming situation which the country had to face during the drought. If Tyagi ji thinks that because of the free trade prices would come down to a normal level, I would only quote to him the example of those commodities which are not under control. It is only wheat which was intended to be brought under control, which was intended to be procured in a monopolistic manner, and it was intended to be distributed through a government machinery. The other commodities, their prices were hiked, the commodities were hoarded, public institutions were exploited. with their money for hoarding, and veritable disaster on the verge of which the country had to live so long was created. Therefore, the machinery under private agencies for the distribution and procurement can under no circumstances either be encouraged or allowed. The other comment made was by my friend of the DMK. He seems to think that monopolistic procurement and distribution would lead to disruption, and he also said that there was no confidence in the agencies dealing with procurement and distribution of food grains. I personally think that this is a question which is not restricted to party politics. Here are the basic requirements. Sir, India is a vast country where the problem of communication, the problem of transport, and the problem of socio-economic conditions are different from area to area, from state to state. Sir, I have attended the Chief Minister's conferences for almost a decade now, being associated with this ministry for long. Whenever we had a problem of procurement, and particularly the mode of procurement, we consulted the chief ministers. They could never come to a conclusion whether there should be a uniform mode of procurement. In fact, they have always told us, and we also appreciated their difficulties, that conditions differ from state to state, and that we must give freedom to the state governments as far as the mode of procurement is concerned. Therefore, we have given some discretion to the state governments for years. For instance, in Punjab and Haryana, levy will not operate, and it will not be acceptable. There are market operations. Whatever comes in the market, they purchase it through the public sector agencies which serve our purpose. But in the deficit states, that will not do. Perhaps in certain states we will have to resort to levy, and I have no objection if it is possible. Sir, as I mentioned, there are no organized markets in areas like Bihar. In certain parts of our country, there are no land records, even if levy is to be accepted as a mode of procurement. There are certain areas in our country where land records are not available, and ultimately who will work it out? The petty village officer will work it out, and a lot of corruption will develop, because ultimately one has to deal with millions of farmers, one has to work out the individual production. What would be the production? What would be the requirement of his family consumption, and how much would be surplus? Then all sorts of manipulations will go on. Corruption may breed into such a large extent. Therefore, some discretion will have to be given to the state governments in regard to state procurements. So, to think that the monopoly procurement theoretically will lead to 100% procurement, I think is not very reasonable and rational. To my mind, if we have to find a solution to this problem as far as food economy is concerned. I feel that public sector agencies should play a commanding role in the market. That means a substantial portion of marketable surplus. Our effort should be to procure it from the public sector agencies in certain areas through market operations, in certain areas through levy, in certain areas through millers levy or producers levy or both, and in certain areas by the combination of all these factors under certain circumstances. Therefore, we have to give some elasticity to these matters in the various parts of the country to achieve the specific objectives. Our objective is to strengthen the Food Corporation of India and such other public sector organizations